Welcome to InterMat's Mother's Day special. And what we have today is a group of wives of wrestling coaches, and we're just going to talk about everything that goes into this. First of all, I just want everybody to go around the room, introduce themselves, say who they're married to, kids, introduce yourself. So I'll start with Lyndsey.
Hi, I'm Lyndsey Beasley. I'm married to Frank Beasley. He is the head coach at George Mason University. We live in Northern Virginia, and we have a son, Franklin, who is 7, and a daughter, Anna, who is 4.
All right, how about Kaille?
My name is Kaille Grey. I'm married to Mike Grey. He is the associate head wrestling coach at Cornell University, and we live in Ithaca, New York. I have 2 kids, a son, Declan, who is 2.5, and a newborn daughter, Delaney, who is right next to me, and she is 3 months next week.
Wow, okay. Allyson.
Hi, I'm Allyson Schwab. I'm married to Doug Schwab. He's the head coach at University of Northern Iowa. We live in Cedar Falls, Iowa. We have 4 kids, 2 boys. Hayden is 13. Hendrix will be 12 next month. And then we have twin 4-year-olds, Jenna and Lennon. Well, they'll be 4 next week.
All right, Jaime.
Hi, I'm Jaime Dubuque. I'm married to Joe Dubuque. He's the associate head coach at Princeton University. We live in the Dirty Jers. We have 2 kids, a 13-year-old Chase and an 8-year-old terror named Sienna.
All right, and McKayla.
Hi, I'm McKayla Engel. I am married to Nate Engel, assistant coach at Oregon State. We live in Albany, Oregon. We've been here for about a year, and we have twin boys, Breck and Brody, who are almost 8 months.
All right. So, this whole thing kind of, I thought about doing this after seeing Kylie's tweet last week about, some of the challenges with, Mike traveling and stuff like that. And that kind of sparked a discussion with some people. So the first thing I want to ask about is when you met your husbands, just because that may kind of give a little bit of a glimpse into, your relationship. And, for instance, with my wife, she had never seen a wrestling match before we met. And maybe a couple months into us dating, it was Valentine's Day. I was coaching high school. We had a snow out and then a match rescheduled for Valentine's Day. So she asked what I was going to do. And what am I going to do? Say, Earl has a hot date, boys, go get him. So, that was kind of introduction to it all. I know, Lyndsey, I've kind of heard one of your stories, but, when did you and Frank meet?
So we met in 2005. He was a camp counselor for my brother in Allentown, like a 2-week long camp there, and my brother's roommate / high school rival, who coaches at Ryder, Nick Bedleon, was like, "Hey Frank, Matt has a sister and she goes to the same school as you." So we met in person whenever we got back to Bloomsburg that fall, and here we are.
All right, Allyson.
I met Doug when he was coaching at Virginia Tech. I was playing softball. I met him in a bar and didn't know that he was a coach. I thought he was an athlete. So I was definitely a little bit surprised when they told me he was a coach. We ended up going against the school and dating, and he was in the middle of training. So, and then Tom took the job at Iowa and took Doug with him, and I moved to Iowa and followed.
All right, McKayla?
I met Nate in 2012, and he actually was still wrestling, and I knew nothing about wrestling. And my first tournament was actually the Olympics in 2012 in London. So it was a nice introduction. And then we got engaged in 2014, and that's when he took the job at Navy and became a coach. So our whole first engagement year, he was in Maryland and I was still in Colorado. So I always joke, I dated a wrestler. I didn't marry like into this, but I love it. So.
And Jamie?
So I wrestled in high school, and I knew that I was going to IU and to Indiana University out in Bloomington. And I was not going to be competing anymore, but I wanted to follow wrestling. And Facebook was brand new at the time. And so I thought, like, you still had to have a college email address to join it. So as soon as I got my like welcome information from IU with a college email address, I joined Facebook right away. And I just started searching wrestling stuff to see if I could find schedules or whatever for IU. And I found this group called the Real Wrestlers of IU. And I was like, that's me. I want to join this group. So I went to join it, and it was blocked by an administrator. Like, you had to wait until they approved it. And Joe Dubuque was the administrator. So I got approved for the group, and he asked me out to lunch. He said he didn't ask me out to dinner because my picture at the time was my senior picture at high school. And I was like doing one of those artistic, like looking away poses. And he said he couldn't see my face all the way, and he wasn't going to waste a night if I wasn't good looking enough. So we went to lunch, and I was like a little bit surprised because we had like some back and forth banter. And at one point, like on Facebook before we met, and at one point I said, like, do you know who I am? And he was like, do you know who I am? And I Googled him, and I was like, oh man, he's won nationals. And so we went to, and I looked at all these pictures of him, and he looked like really strong against all these guys. And then I didn't really read his stats at all. And when we went out on our first lunch date and he picked me up in his Jeep, I just hopped in, and I was like, this is so hot. It's a Jeep. And then we went to get out to go into the restaurant to eat. And he like kind of like disappeared behind the hood and was walking. And it's because he's 5'2". But so is like every other 25-pounder, barring like Nick Simmons. So I was like, this guy's short as hell. And I didn't think it was going to go anywhere, but he just wore me down, you know, and he won nationals his senior year. So I went to nationals. I told my mom, I go, I'm going to Oklahoma City to watch him wrestle, whether you like it or not. I'm driving out there. And my mom said, we'll let you go. We'll let you drive out. But I'm going with you. And so is your grandma. Because my grandma was a truck driver at one point in her life. So me and my mom and my grandma road trip to Oklahoma City to watch Joe wrestle and win nationals again. So that was the start of our glorious relationship.
That's awesome. Before we started, Kaille, I know you said you knew Mike in high school.
Yes. So Mike and I have known each other. I mean, now I'm dating myself. I think it's been about 16 years we've known each other. We were just really good friends in high school. I was a manager at the local public high school, and had he gone to public school in high school, he would have gone to that high school. So all the kids that were on our team were friendly with him and knew him from the rec league when they were younger. And he lived in town. We actually grew up about 5 minutes away from each other, didn't know each other until high school. And then I think I was a freshman when we met, and he was a few years old, junior, maybe a senior. Yeah, so we were just friends. I went to school in North Carolina at Appalachian State University, go Mountaineers. And he was up in Ithaca at Cornell, and I moved back home to New Jersey after I graduated to work, and his parents still lived there. So I had stopped over to his house to say hi to his cousin who was in town because he had been living in Maryland for a while. And I guess he texted Mike to tell him that I was at the house. And Mike and I had parted ways like for about a year. We hadn't seen each other. And then he texted me, and then that was just kind of it. I mean, after that, I said, oh, well, I think I'm going to marry this guy. I mean, if you had told me that when I was in high school, I would have told you you're out of your mind, completely out of your mind, because he was a mute. He didn't talk to anybody. He didn't speak at all. So he's come around quite a bit since then. But yeah, so, and it just worked because I loved wrestling as soon as I loved wrestling before him, and I just love it even more now. So it's been a fun ride.
Cool. I love those. So I have to wonder how it is, this time of year, maybe, a month or so ago, the coaching carousel always starts going, and people like me are just throwing out names like, Nate Engel should be hired here, Frank Beasley here, Mike Gray. So on you guys' end, is it kind of stressful when you hear, maybe we're going across the country? And I'll preface it, I'm sure everybody is happy with their current situation and their husband's job, but and I know a couple of you have moved already, once or twice or maybe more than that. So Jaime.
Yeah, so like we're definitely one of the couples that moved a couple of times. Like I followed Joe out to Hofstra. I went to a different school in New York, but I followed him out to Hofstra right after my freshman year of college, and he was there for 3 years, and then we ended up leaving Hofstra and going back to IU. And then we were there for 3 years, and then we found out that we were pregnant with our daughter. We'd been like trying for a couple of years, and like the same week we found out that we were going to be coming out to Princeton. So we've been a little bit all over the place, and there have been like a couple of interviews here and there. I think that it's hard to be supportive all the time. Like it's hard to balance being supportive and feeling selfish, right? Like you, especially, like I know Allyson and Doug have older sons too. Like once your kids are established and rooted in a school district and they have friends, they've had friendships for like a really long time, and they finally have found their groove. You feel terrible at the prospect of almost having like that military family life where it could be like every couple of years you're moving. So I think that as your kids get older, you hope that you're settled, and you get nervous when you hear about some big opportunities coming up. But at the same time, you always we always kind of have this idea at our house of you throw your hat in the ring and just see what comes from it. Sometimes it's interview experience or whatever. We are super lucky, like you were saying, about being happy where we're at. Joe's a native Jersey guy, and he can get Taylor ham on demand whenever he wants, and Dunkin' Donuts.
Jealous.
So like he's, he loves that. And we're lucky we're so close with the families that are part of the coaching staff. So we're in a good spot right now, but I sympathize big time and empathize with those families where you've got young kids. Maybe you're not in a head coaching situation yet. So a lot of situations would not be lateral, like you would be moving up and growing. So I sympathize for those families because it's hard to feel like you're leaving people. Like Joe and I are in this weird situation where we've actually never, in all the places that we've been, we have never lived more than 2 hours away from our parents. When we were at IU, my parents were 2 hours away. We're 45 minutes from his parents. So we've always been in that situation. But there are times where you start thinking of things and, could I really do this all by myself? Start all over again in a new city, not knowing anybody, with my husband being gone to some extent. Honestly, like 8 months worth of weekends out of the year.
Yeah, I know, Lyndsey, you've had a couple moves.
A few.
Up and down, up and down the East Coast.
Yes, we like the Eastern Seaboard. So when Frank left Bloomsburg, he went to Buffalo, and when I graduated, because of the requirements, I had to pass my CPA exam in Pennsylvania before I could move to New York. So I moved back in with my parents after I graduated, and then eventually moved to Buffalo, and then we moved to Binghamton right after we got married. And that's where Frank started working for Pat. And we were anticipating being in Binghamton for a while. I mean, Pat had really established that program, and that season NC State opened, and Pat got the job, and he wanted to take Frank with him. And we had closed on a house like the month before in Binghamton. So then we turned around and sold our house in Binghamton and moved to North Carolina, and we did not buy a house there. It was like, we're done buying houses until you're a head coach, because like we can't, like we lost so much money on the whole deal in Binghamton, buying and selling so quickly. And then we were in Raleigh for 5 years, and that's where we had both of our children. And now we're here, and until we moved to George Mason and Frank was a head coach, every year we did go through that, like, which jobs are going to open? Are you going to apply? Blah, blah, blah. And no offense to the Midwesterners and whatever, I did not want to be very far from my family. In Raleigh, we were 8 hours from my parents, and it's hard when you have babies and no family anywhere in sight. But I don't know. I don't really think about the coaching carousel thing at this point. I'm extremely happy in Northern Virginia. I'm 3 hours from my family. Our kids are in a phenomenal school district, and I have a unicorn of a job that I never want to leave ever. So it's good, but it's a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. And McKayla, you just were at Naval Academy, as you mentioned, and then Stanford and Oregon State just last year. So you had a recent move.
Yeah, so we actually moved, and I was 6 months pregnant with twins. So that was fun, moving into a new house with twins and not really being able to pack the house. And I love being hands-on when we move. Up until that point, I was pretty happy with moving. I love traveling. When we were at Navy, we were 2 hours from my family. So that was nice. When Nate was gone recruiting almost every weekend, I'd go and see my nieces and nephews. So that was pretty hard going to Stanford then. But with having the two boys, we looked at everything. We lived 20 miles from Stanford, but it would take Nate sometimes 2 hours to get home, just with the crazy traffic. So that was one of the big reasons we took the job too. Here is we still live 20 minutes away, but it takes them 20 minutes to get home, which is great. And I know everyone said it too. We're super happy here. Our neighborhood, even though I have no family around here, so it is tough. My family's back in Pennsylvania, and Nate's dad's in California. But our neighborhood it's a brand new neighborhood, so there's lots of kids, brand new families. So we're almost in our little bubble here, which is nice. So.
And Allyson, I know you're native Virginian, and you mentioned Virginia Tech, then going out to Iowa.
Yeah. So I was really excited to leave. I was kind of like ready and knew that I wanted to follow Doug, and pretty much had told him, like, if you see this going further than like dating, then I'll move halfway across the country for you. And thankfully he did. But yeah, it was hard. I'm about 13 hours from my family. Both of his parents are deceased now. So we don't have, grandparents per se here, but you and I in the Cedar Falls community has really embraced our family, has been really good to us. We live in a great neighborhood that would be really hard to leave. And just what Doug's built here, the relationships that we've built here, and we're really happy and super thankful for the opportunity. And obviously I do get a little nervous, and we just went through a little bit of a chaotic time. And exactly, what Jaime was saying was just like, you've got older kids, and and they're looking at us like, is this really going to happen? And we're, happy with our friends. We're happy with our wrestling club. Our twins are autistic. And so, you're looking at the needs of them and what is available at other places. And what we have here is it just fits right now. It's really good, and super thankful for that. But I think that just like any of these other ladies, the biggest thing that, makes you okay with it is this, that you see the passion that our husbands display for, of what they do. And I always refer to it as like a calling, because it was just so clear when I saw Doug that I knew that he was going to keep coaching, like that he was where he was. And I finally just kind of decided, like, whatever I did, it was going to work around that, because that's what he was called to do. And I was, going to support it, but still, chase my dreams as well. But my dreams just kind of ended up conforming again to fit his schedule in a way. And so, but I think that that's why it makes it okay being away from family, is that you've just got this great bond with, your spouse. Not that I don't want to like kick him in the head sometimes too, but it's just that it's something that you get to see them do. And anytime that he's on like a call or, talking to a recruit, and I'm sure these ladies feel the same way, or you see them doing a press conference or something, then, you're reminded real quick that they're where they're supposed to be and you're where you're supposed to be.
So, and Kaille, I assume you probably haven't moved, but, I've heard great things about Mike and Mike's name being mentioned in, head coaching opportunities. So I know that's at least something that's probably crossed your mind or you've talked about.
Yeah, it's definitely something that's been looming. And just as Allyson was saying that they've had a chaotic couple weeks, we've, in our own way, not in the same way, but we've also had a chaotic couple weeks losing a coach and, trying to figure out, we're also in the Ivy League. I know Jaime probably is going through a lot of the same things we're going through, and there's some doubts, but I think that right now it seems like everything's kind of on track for us to rejoin the wrestling world here soon. And, but it's definitely been a little bit different. And so I think the idea of leaving right now is hard to wrap our brain around. We're very happy. We are obviously open to everything. Also, like Jaime said, whether it's just for interviewing experience or the opportunity to be the head of his own program and instill his coaching philosophies and try and impact a different set of kids. But there's been a lot going on for us in Ithaca right now that's just been really wonderful. With Yanni and Vito and Kyle, Spartan, like our connection with Spartan has been so wonderful that it's really kind of propelled us to great heights with these kids. And Mike's been a huge part of it, and it's been really awesome for me to watch. But I do realize that with that then comes those conversations of, is this going to be the one that Mike's going to take? Is Mike going to leave? And then it causes some anxiety with all of those people just mentioned and everybody else on the team. And it's definitely a hard thing. And, for me, it's not as difficult to envision us going anywhere. I was 18 years old, 17 when I committed to it and moved to North Carolina. I didn't know a single soul at Appalachian State University. I just moved on down there and left and never looked back. So I'm open to moving wherever. But it is hard with our families. Both of our families are in New Jersey. We're 3 hours away. And when Mike's gone, like I had said that in the tweet, he will. I counted up the days because I was feeling a little down and out about it, but 70 days between a couple, like last week and August 10th. That's a lot. He'll miss the 25% of my daughter's life as it is right now. It's a lot. And so usually when he's gone, I go down. My in-laws have a house in Lavallette, New Jersey at the beach, and my son loves it. And he has cousins and my family's there, and my family and Mike's family are actually very close. So we all spend a ton of time together, and it's really wonderful. So being away from that is very hard to imagine, and being away from the people that we're around right now is very hard to imagine also, because they're very much a part of our family. My son thinks he's 20 years old and just one of the kids on the team. He's out there in practice right now, just probably bossing everybody around with his miniature throwing dummy. So, it's hard, but I know what I signed up for. I said that too, and I really did. And we're along for the ride, and we're committed to that. So, home is where he is, home is where we are. So I think that that's kind of where we've got to roll with that. Otherwise, we're all just going to be not very happy.
Kaille, it's funny that you mentioned the thing about how much of his daughter's life he's going to miss or whatever. Joe and I'm sure I was in a drunken stupor arguing with him one time, late at night. And somehow I got to the point of doing the math, and it ended up being that about every 4.5 or 5 years, Joe is gone a full year worth of time.
Oh my God.
So I was for every 5 years, I've raised a kid by myself a year. And, between the barefoot wine and that, it was devastating. When you really swallow the reality of that, and the thing is at the end of the day, like, I think that people in their mind hear like Division I college coach or head college coach of any division, you know, and in their minds, they're like, oh, I picture like Nick Saban, and they think of the money. And and like that I could maybe like jet set and go see my family anytime I need to, because my family's, you know, 11 hours away.
Right.
Or, you know, that we could just put a down payment on a house all of a sudden if we needed to. And it's like, no, man, we are like scraping for summer camps and clinics and all of these things. And you throw a pandemic into the mix and you're losing, you know, and it's devastating. Like my parents are coming to visit on Memorial Day because they're both vaccinated now. My parents haven't seen my kids in person in over a year. It was a year in December since they've seen them face to face. And I've seen them 2 days in person since last December. So, I mean, it's a hard situation to be in, but I'll tell you what, when I watch these other people, like, and I'm going to say like women, these other women who have a husband who's gone overnight one time ever for like some office job or whatever. They're like, he's going on a corporate retreat. I'm not going to see him until Friday. And I'm like, I haven't seen Joe in 2 weeks. I don't even know who he is anymore. My kid hit puberty while he was gone. Like,
well, it's funny. When I made that tweet, I actually texted Allyson. I was like, okay, there's a couple there. I'm getting a lot of positive feedback. I didn't intend for any feedback because I've got like 2 followers on Twitter. But I was getting feedback, nice comments from Nate Engel, right? Things like that. And I texted Allyson, I'm like, there are these 2 guys, like these 2 shitheads that are sitting here saying that. I'm like, well, you know, you're acting like he's in the military. I'm like, no, I'm not acting like that. I'm just telling you he's going to be gone this many days. And for the athlete, I mean, I wasn't even complaining. I'm just saying everyone should be more grateful, because I don't think people really think about it. And just like everybody should be grateful for the military and their families who are also sacrificing. It's all a sacrifice, right? It's just, and Allyson talked me off the ledge and then, you know, put the guy in his place. But, you know, it's really just about your perspective. And for us, them being gone this much, it's a lot. Missing 25% of your kid's life is a lot. Missing 1 for every 5 years, that's a lot. And military people do more. And that's probably why I'm not married to a military person, because this is hard to handle enough as it is, right? And it's not easy.
I think once you know, we're like Jaime, where we have like a little bit of older kids too, the hard thing that we run into is like, I'm taking the boys to these wrestling tournaments. So it's like me and 7 guys, you know, 7 dads.
Yeah.
And, you know, I'm not like Jaime where I wrestled or anything. And so, you know, I am just being mom, and that part is nice. But at the same time, I'm like calling Doug about like weight and like, hey, what should he eat? And Doug's, you know, on the road or in a duel and can't answer me. And so you're relying on a lot of people. But I think the hardest part is just that you get into a routine and then they come back in and they want to be helpful, and they are, but it's like you've built this routine because that's how you've survived. And then they come back in and it's like, oh my gosh. So like Doug being home last year during the pandemic, it was great. But at the same time, I was like, someone needs to let him in a wrestling room and a sauna like ASAP, or like one of us is not going to survive, you know? And so I think that's the most difficult thing. But how at least how our family does is, you know, I mean, the boys now, they're old enough to realize that he's working. Like for a while, we went through the stage though, that it was like, well, where's dad? Oh, he can't come, you know? And I'm like, no. And it's hard to tell them like, well, yeah, he's working out with Max. And so he can't come to your, you know, school informants or whatever. And, or he can't be at this wrestling tournament because they wrestle Iowa State. And now that they're older, they understand it a little bit more and they're watching, you know, while they're away. But there's a few years in there where it's pretty rough, where, you know, it is all on you, and how they view your spouse is really directly how you tell them to view them. You know, if you make it like they miss, yeah, you're right, it sucks, they're missing everything and you should be mad at them, they're going to be mad at them. But, you know, you kind of write the narrative for them. And so I don't envy that. I also don't envy the like baby years. And I've gone through the twin thing too. And mama, I hope you're sleeping more than we did, because ours did not sleep for a year or more. And I know what that's like when you don't have family and you're not sleeping and they're gone for 2 to 3 days at a time. And I mean, I don't even know how people function, but apparently I can function on a lot less sleep if I need to.
They are sleeping through the night now, and I feel like I'm more tired because I'm getting sleep.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know how to function with sleep. Yeah, Nate, he was just gone for a whole week last week, I think. I don't even remember when it was. And everyone's like, "How are you doing it? How do you do it?" I'm like, I don't. But when we met, he was wrestling, and he was gone for a month at a time.
Well, and what's your choice?
Yeah, and exactly. All of our neighbors, especially with twins, they're like, "How do you do it?" I'm like, I'm not going to just leave one cry. Like, you just make it work. You get up, you have your great routine. Nate's super helpful when he's home, but we get into a good groove when it's just the three of us and we have things going, and they know the routine and they know what's going to happen. And you just get up and you do it. And what other choice do you have, really?
Yep.
Yeah. All right. So I'm going to kind of change gears a little bit. You've mentioned, the two turds on Twitter. So as we're not football where, you have a coach call to play every single, play of the game, but, I'm sure you have been in the stands and maybe you hear some criticism, your husband or the other coaches, or you're on social media and you hear stuff. How do you guys react and how do you feel hearing these things, and now I'll let you just jump in rather than, going around the circle.
I'll just do a caveat. I am known as Twitterless McKayla.
Yes.
So I don't have Twitter. I sometimes look at Nate's just to kind of see what's been happening. Other than that, I also don't have time to look at it. So I'm probably not the best one to answer this question since I am hashtag Twitterless McKayla. So.
Well, definitely some people have helped this year and have, taken probably a lot of pressure off the coaches getting any tweets. So I don't know. I definitely would say I get defensive over him for sure. I mean, I think all of us would, the same as if you hear someone in the stands and I'll go somewhere and I love it. I love it if no one knows me, because then it's like you do kind of like hear this honest opinion. And I've had those moments where I've been like, oh, really? Like, I'm his wife. Nice to meet you, and
Yes.
and it's kind of like, right. You're ready to throw punches. I think the hardest thing is that most of us probably put our families out there in some way or another. And so you have some people that they really do know your family and like what you're going through behind the scenes. And then you have people that don't, but assume that they do. So watching, like, I'm just going off of like our last 3 weeks. And so like watching people, have conspiracy theories if like Doug applied for Illinois and he didn't. And like, and then the reasons why we would leave or wouldn't leave, like kind of just watching that play out. And at the same time, like, the conversations that are going on at home, it's hard not to be a little bit defensive. And at the same time, you remember that like, a lot of these people, they don't know you at all, and then I leave it alone. But Doug will definitely ask me like, hey, how's your day going? And I'll be like, oh, I'm fighting the internet, for Kaille, or, I have no problem fighting for other people. A lot of times I'll kind of like back down if it's like me, but I'll like go to war for some other people.
Yeah, I'll just leave it at, I'm from New Jersey. So everything is probably amplified by 1,000. Jaime might be able to, living there for a few years and being married to one of us, she probably knows. Yeah, I definitely get upset. And Mike is constantly yelling at me to not engage. So just don't engage. I'm like, well, but I just said this. What if I just say this? He's like, what if you just don't say anything? What does it matter? They don't know anything. You're like where you're sitting versus where they're sitting. They don't, it's just very hard for me. And I like to describe myself. I'm not very competitive. I played sports in high school and I like sports and I like to win better than I like to lose, but I've always kind of described myself as less competitive. Like if it really means, like, if it means that much to you, you can just win. I don't really care, but I'm I'm not competitive, but I'm very protective. So when it comes to like my boys and my husband, it's just really, I would go to battle way quicker than I would go for myself. Like Allyson was saying, I just want to protect them. I'm like, it's like a mama bear kind of thing. And it started with my brother-in-law. Mike's brother wrestled at Cornell. So it's just kind of escalated since then. And the more success there is, you know, it's hard. So, but yeah, I'm on a scale 1 to 10, I'm an 11 usually.
Yeah, I'm the announcer for Princeton for the wrestling team, and where the announcer sits is in front of the away team fans, like directly in front of them. So I hear everything.
Yeah.
Everything. And I won't here's the thing, like if you're heckling me, I'm going to say something back, regardless of the fact that I have a microphone in front of me. So the poor athletic director at Princeton has the poor woman, who knows what they're dealing with. Like Joe and I don't scream like Ivy League material to begin with. And so it's like a sore thumb. And then you give me a microphone and you put Joe in a corner and he's losing his mind. And like when I announce, I make fun of Joe. Like I rip on the coaches a little bit
hilarious.
and everything. And you know, like this is what I do. Like I talk about my husband looking like a used car salesman when really I know he just got that suit. It's a new suit, you know, like constantly. But because like I want to show like we don't take ourselves too seriously, you know. But it's funny, you know, like Kylie's saying, like as we've gotten better as a team, like now that the team is a little bit of a threat, now suddenly it's not it draws a crowd, and that's great. But there's also another side to it. And like I've been ripped on Twitter as the announcer for being biased. What the hell were you expecting? I'm literally wearing tiger stripe pants. Like, did you think I was going to be like, now guys, let's be fair? Like, no, you know, like that's the way. And I get mad at the refs. You know, we had John Schleifer was wrestling years ago and clearly had back points and they were not giving it to him. And I said, Jonathan Schleifer likes long walks on the beach and getting back points when he earns them. And, you know, I got yelled at by some guy, or, you know, I was told that I was biased again. And I'm like, yep, sure am. I don't know what they thought I was going to be. Like, I'm not there to sing the national anthem. Like, I'm not on everybody's side. You know, and then like the stuff that I do, you know, kind of like you guys were saying, like I'll jump up and like I'll die on a lot of different hills. Like I'll fight for other people and stuff. Like I definitely operate with the give me a reason to speak up kind of thing. And my husband likewise will be like, hey, just don't worry about what they said. Don't engage. And I'm like, I'm not. And then I'm like, did you know this guy? This guy's a plumber for like, what the hell are you even doing? And it's been 2 hours. Like we've gone to a diner, we're at home. And like, I'm trying to find out if this guy still owes money for a Blockbuster account that went under. Like, I just get really into it. But like, I think that what's fair for all of us to say is you can't have it both ways. You can't have me love and be supportive and put everything I have into this team. And, you know, I'm willing to run stuff back and forth to tables, or, you know, go and pick up somebody from an airport, or do what I have to do to help make the machine run. And then also not expect me to be just as fired up when I feel like it's being attacked from such an outer perspective, when they don't see that as soon as that kid lost, my husband went back there and lost his mind, you know, or, you know, was yelling at the ref or doing everything that he could in his power to make something happen. So, you know, it comes with the territory, definitely. I thought that since I had been in this, like I've been with Joe for 15 years and he's been coaching for basically 14 of them. So you would think 14 years in, I would have calmed down. Turns out like I'm just getting started. It's a whole
I think for me, I definitely have a lot of the mama bear instinct too, in terms of like I will protect him and his reputation like I would my children. But on a scale of like 1 to 11 billion, I am much calmer now than I used to be. When my brother was wrestling, one duel is burned into my brain. He was wrestling at Tech and wrestling Gerard Garnett, and I was like, I was yelling, and it was not pretty. And Frank was just like sitting next to me, like, people know we're together. You have to relax. I'm like, no, like, because we had been in Illinois for Thanksgiving that year, and at his parents' house, and we drove all night to get to Blacksburg to be there for the duel. And so I was sleep deprived, and I'm very angry when I'm sleep deprived. And so it was ridiculous, but he likes to tell everybody that, you know, he calmed me down because we're married now. And I have to keep it together a little more than I used to.
I think it's hard too, like with the guys on the team too. Like, I'm just gonna extend that protective feeling toward the guys on the team, especially like when you know that somebody like 2 days ago honestly thought he like blew out his ACL and it was a sprain, but he's still trying to, you know, make sure that he qualifies for nationals or whatever. And, you know, and so you're watching and you hear things or see things about how, you know, he looked tired or gassed or lazy, or, you know, why isn't he looked bad out there, and you want to be like, you don't even know. And so that's really hard too. Like, I find myself wanting to be protective, and, you know, like I feel like part of that too, I've seen with the Ivy League strain of things. Like, I know the academic side of what these kids are doing and how they literally make weight, wrestle, go do something. Like Joe had to proctor a final one time for Princeton, like had to proctor it at nationals in a hotel room. Like, the kid's future was entrusted in Joe's hands, and Joe's having to take pictures of it and scan it and send it to the professor. And I'm like trying to hold the lighting right. I look like a boom mic operator trying to get it right, because I was so scared we were going to mess it up. But, you know, what these kids do, it's, you know, like people like at Princeton say, like, you're doing the hardest sport at the hardest school. And it is the hardest sport. And so what these kids are doing, I think it makes you super protective, because you see just how much goes into it too.
This conversation brings me back to Final X when it was at Rutgers. And I was like feeling the New Jersey feels anyway, because I was back home and everyone was amped up. And it was just the horrifying situation with the Yanni and Zane thing, which ended up being wrong. But Jessica Scott gave me her ticket. Bad idea, because she was like, she didn't go to the second session, so hers was like right down on the floor. There was like a little bar kind of in front of me, but I was in the front row, and then there was like the whole row of floor seats right in front but it was close enough. And as soon as the whole blunder of everything happened, I was like, they're gonna screw him over. We had one of the kids on the team sitting next to me, and it just so happened that there were these two parents. We were recruiting their kid sitting on the other side of me. So the whole time I was like I'm like, okay, Cornell, Ivy League. I didn't go to an Ivy League school, so I haven't really fully embodied this, you know, like Jamie was saying. And there are these recruits' parents next to me. And then there's like this, you know, one of the kids on the team on the other side of me. And I have like my 1-year-old or 1.5-year-old, however old Declan was at the time. I had him with me. And the next thing you know, they're like telling me, they're like saying that Yanni lost. And I was like, no, he didn't. This is wrong. This is not right. This is against the rules. And like everyone's screaming and the whole place going nuts. And I jumped over like the bar thing that was in front of me, because I couldn't get around fast enough with Declan, and I ran up and I yelled at Mike and Rob and Yanni. I was like, do not leave the mat, do not leave. You know, I was like yelling at them, and I can just remember them like looking at me like, what the hell are you doing? I was like, had this baby like on my hip screaming. We did not get the recruit. I said, oh, sorry guys. Sorry. They were nice about it, but I was like, yeah, well, I mean, I would do it for I said, I kind of feel like I was selling it a little. Like, I would do that for your kid too. Don't you want someone to do that for your kid? You know?
Yeah,
but,
absolutely.
Oh, yeah, no, but it was, you know, you just kind of get wrapped up in it, and it's their life, it's their dream, all of it's their dreams, and you, just as much as your husbands, want to help them realize their dreams. And in these situations, that's what it's all about. It makes such a big difference, you know, in high intensity moments. It's totally personal.
Such a personal sport, you know, and I think that's like really separates it, is that not only are you watching these guys that have trained in school and everything that you're talking about, but now they have their, like, somebody has their hands on them, like, you know, and then I want to like go down there and like air fight the coach, and like I'm trying from the stands, and thankfully the Twins did like take a little bit out of me. So I like dropped it down a little bit, because I will never forget, I went to Iowa State for the first time when we were at Northern Iowa, and I'm like stomping and yelling, and I look down and like half of like our red shirts and our guys that aren't like watching are just looking at me like this. And I was like, didn't I not do this here? Like, so there's been plenty of times where I've like, you know, I've brought it down a little bit, but
It's still somewhere there inside.
oh, it's there. It's there. Yeah.
All right, so we've actually covered a lot of ground. You know, before we go, I'd be remiss. I know my wife is my biggest supporter. You know, great. You know, has all the confidence in the world in me, but at the same time, she can kind of humble me like nobody else, and she loves to give me a hard time. So, Jaime did a little bit earlier talking about the first date, but maybe a funny story or something about your husband that maybe I can give him a hard time about later.
Oh, geez.
I mean, I like with Joe, when we were first dating so when we were first dating, like the big thing obviously was like the guys were like, oh my God, Joe might keep a girl through the wrestling season, like a girlfriend, because she understands what weight cutting is like, you know, and so maybe it'll last. So we're like headed into the season and we're still dating, but things are still very fresh. And I'm at his house, and at his house, he lived with Brandon Becker, who's a Jersey kid, and Brady Richardson, this kid who was from IU. But anyway, they're both teammates. And they had like a bunch of people over there having like a party right before the season was about to ramp up, and they were going to have to be watching their weight and everything. And Joe was like still wanting to get up early to work out. And so he was like, hey, I'm ready to get to bed. I know people are still here partying, but like, let's just go to bed. So he goes into his room, which was down a hallway. It was like a ranch style house, and it was down a hallway. And then you turned like a hard right into his room. And I'm like, what are you talking about? We're just getting started. It was like 11:30 at night. And Brandon Becker's brother, Rob, had come out to visit. And he said to me, yo, I heard you wrestle. And I'm like, yeah, I did. Yeah, I did. And he's like, you think you could like double Joe? And I'm like, yeah, I could double Joe right now. Watch me. And I took off freaking blasting, right? Just loaded up on like adrenaline and natty light. And I made a hard right, and I blast double Joe, and I thought he was going to hit his bed, but he went flying over the bed and he cracked his head on the nightstand. I thought I killed him. And he stood up and he goes, get in the bed now. And I thought I pissed my pants. I was so scared. But still, like to this day, the people that were there were like, yo, remember when Jaime Blast doubled you? And he's like, yeah, everybody remembers. Greatest moment of my life. That's gonna be in my eulogy. Like I'll put it on my headstone. Like, here lies Jaime. She blast double Joe. It was awesome.
That's great.
I guess I'll say I'm not an emotional person. I get fired up like you ladies do too, and will defend my husband. But I'm not very emotional. I don't like to talk about my feelings. And when we got engaged, I thought I was always going to live in Colorado for the rest of my life before I met Nate and got into wrestling, obviously, like I said. So when he moved to Maryland for that year that we were engaged, when he moved, I was crying, and he's like, oh, you're going to miss me. Like, and he was like getting a little emotional and was like almost proud of me for showing my emotions. I was like, no, this just means I'm going to be leaving Colorado in a year. He's like, really? And I was like, yep. So you'll be fine. I'll see you in a year. But I was just sad to move.
I think ours would be, I think if I'm right, it was like the trials in 2007. And I walked over to like go and watch, and Doug had warmed up, and like this was the funniest part that like, I just think is hilarious. Numerous times, like me and Doug and Brent Metcalf would be like rooming together. Like Brent would be downstairs and like we'd be like upstairs at like one of those resident inns or something, or I just show up and like thinking Doug has his own room and he's like, oh no, like Brent's in here like with us, you know? And then they were at the same weight in the same bracket, you know, so it was just very odd for a little bit, you know. But it was I think it was like the finals, and Doug dropped one of his shoes out of his bags, like in the middle of the road, you know, between like the Residence Inn and like the Las Vegas Convention Center. You know how you like run across the street and like dodge traffic, and he like dropped one of his shoes. So all of a sudden I see Metcalf like take off to go find his shoe in the middle of the road before finals. So, and he did, made the team. And I just remember I was like yelling in the stands and, you know, grabbing onto Metcalf like this, because it was just like me and him there. And he's like sitting with me. And this guy just turns around and was like, I thought you were going to beat the absolute shit out of him, you know, because I'm like, so that would be, other than that, the funniest thing ever is that when Doug interviewed at UNI, he had to change and we like drove up here. So he like jumped out of the car, changed, threw on his dress pants, left his pants with his wallet and everything in this random like spot in this road, kind of like by the baseball field. So after the interview and everything, and we're like driving back home, we get a call from facilities and they're like, we found your pants and like your wallet on this road. Like, and he's like, oh my gosh. He was just so like, kind of nervous, but trying to, you know, get ready for the interview. And thankfully they found it. So those would be like my two Doug stories.
Love it.
I have one other one, because if you know Nate, this when he was a 25 pounder in college, but after senior level, he was 121 pounds. So when we met, it was Olympic trials. And like I said, I knew nothing about wrestling. So he's cutting weight to get down to 121, 55 kilos. And we go out to eat sushi, and he literally, I say he took like 2 bites. He's like, no, ate a whole roll. I'm like, 1 roll of sushi. And I said, I walked away from that date saying, I don't mind eating more than a guy, but I was like, this is absurd. And still to this day, this boy does not eat anything. He's such a snacker. And if you know Nate, like I have to text him during tournaments and be like, please go get a snack. Please drink some water. He's so preoccupied, and it hasn't changed to this day. So
I guess I have like two really quick ones. One season, I think it was our first one at NC State. I'm pretty sure that somebody on the staff started carrying a stapler around, because Frank literally split every suit and every pair of pants that he owned coaching that year. And I mean, seriously, he came home and was like from a duel, and I must have been an away duel because I wasn't there. And there were like 67 staples in the back of his pants. I'm like, what is this? He's like, I need to take them and get fixed. I'm like, I think this is just trash now. Like, I don't think we're gonna pay anybody to get these out. And the other one, which I guess maybe more of a, I don't know, it's not really a dig at me, but it's just his own, like, it's just who he is. He falsely proposed to me like 15 times. Like, he pretended. Like, he would trip on the boardwalk if we were at the beach and pretend he was going to propose, and then be like, oh, just kidding, need to tie my sneaker, or like stupid stuff like that. He did it to me at Niagara Falls on the 4th of July one year, and like all of these tourists thought he was serious, and I was just like, like, could you stop?
I would have killed him.
Then, oh my God! Well, the night before we actually got engaged, and he came to take me to my final section of my CPA exam, and I had told him prior to that, I was like, listen, if you do this to me one more time and it's not real, like, I'm done. I can't. Like, this is ridiculous. I know you're a funny guy, but like, this is not funny anymore. And so he did it to me the night before he did it for real, and I was like, I couldn't even look at him. And my mom is like in on all of it. And she's like, Tiki, it's fine. I'm like, it's not fine. No. Like, and then when I actually did get proposed to, I got proposed to with 3 ring boxes in front of me. One of them was empty. One of them had like a little pawn shop ring on it that was like just like a silver band, and then the other one was like my actual ring. And I'm like, can we just like not with this? Like, yeah, I'm gonna marry you, but like, really?
I don't know. I don't know what I don't know what funny story that I could say. I mean, I think when Mike graduated, he kind of knew that he was done competing and he really just wanted to move on to coaching. So he just Rob put him on staff. It kind of worked out. Matt Azevedo had just taken the job at Drexel. So the volunteer position was open. So Mike just kind of slid into the position. Everything worked out perfectly. And at that point, he was the only one that wasn't married or had a family. So he drove a whole bus full of guys to wrestle in the Canada Cup. And he had one of his teammates' weddings that he was in. Sorry, the week before. Sorry. And so of course they were boozing. I mean, work hard, play hard, you know, sometimes with those Ivy League boys, but I'm just losing my train of thought.
That's all right.
So
do you need to go?
Halfway there, no, it's okay.
Okay.
Halfway there, the kids in the van convinced him to wrestle in the Canada Cup, and he got to Canada and had to cut like 20 pounds in like a day and a half, and just said that it was the worst. I mean, took third. He lost to Franklin Gomez, but and just said that was it. He's like, that just solidifies my decision to never compete again. And that was the end of that for him. But yeah, I don't know any like super funny, embarrassing ones off the top of my head.
All right. Well, you ladies have been very generous with your time. Before we go, is there anything that you need to plug or anything? I know, Allyson, you have something big coming up.
I do.
Your big trip.
Oh. Yes. So June 18th, me and my two boys are leaving for Uganda. We're going to go on a mission trip. I took Hayden 2 years ago. We go and give out beds, Bibles, mosquito nets, and then serve and share the word. And so we were supposed to go last year, and then obviously COVID. And so we leave on the 18th. So I'm super excited. It will be a great experience. It will be different. Hendrix is a little bit different than Hayden. Hayden is like my let's get lost in some random country and we'll be fine partner. And like, that's how I am. And Hendrix is a little bit more like, what's the game plan? You know, like, let's get in and get out and like get done, you know, kind of thing. So it'll be interesting, but I'm just excited that, it'll be just me and them and a little bit of time away and a big experience for them both. But pray for Doug. He'll be here with the twins. I have lots of help. Let's be honest.
I'm sure.
I know Nate has not been, he's super helpful with the twins, but he has not spent a day with them alone. So yes.
He'll get there when they're like,
Yeah,
we're getting there.
Mike had Declan the other day. I forget what I had to do. He had him at the wrestling facility all day, and Declan is in the middle of potty training, and he pooped in his pants 3 times by the time I got back. I said, Mike, I just went out. I was going to the grocery store. I was like, dude, like, are you kidding me? The kid had no underwear on, and he was running around in like shorts that Mike found in the bottom of the diaper bag.
you know what Doug used to do is he used to take the big wrestling dummies and he'd like make a playpen.
Yeah.
And so like the girls or it'd probably be more like Hayden and Hendrix when we were at another school down south, and they would just be like, have their hands up on the dummies, like looking over. And so I have like pictures of like Doug working out and like Hayden kind of propping himself up, like watching him. And there's just so many things like that I think is super fun. Like in all of our alumni, and I'm sure yours do too, they have these funny memories of like our kids of times you've dropped them off thinking like, hey, I need to go run some errands, and you've dropped them off. And then like, they're like, yeah, like Doug just threw a bucket of soap in the showers and just let him have at it. And I'm like, oh my God, you know, And it just stuff like that. Or he'd be washing the mats and then all of a sudden it'd be a slip and slide going on, and
Yeah.
everybody would be taken off across them. So it is fun to look back. And when you go to like their weddings, I was just at a wedding this past weekend. One of the guys there has been with us this whole time. So he's seen our kids that when they were like 1 and 2, and now they're 13 and almost 12, and they can lift him up and hear, he probably babysat them and changed their diapers and things like that. So I do think it is a unique family. I don't think that there's other families like wrestling families, that just really embrace like who you are and everyone. And it's just kind of like a group collaborative effort, so I'm very thankful.
Yes.
All right. Well, I'm very thankful for all of your time, and wish each and every one of you and everybody listening happy Mother's Day.
Happy Mother's Day.
Happy Mother's Day.
Mother's Day.
Happy Mother's Day. Thank you so much.
Yes,
Thank you. Yeah,
Thank
this is
you.